Hi, everybody. I'm Ceri Witts, and I'm with Ceri Witts Coaching. I've got Oier on the line today, and I wanted to introduce him. We're going to have a chat today about all things holistic health and lifestyle. So Oier is a fellow health and lifestyle coach by the Czech Institute, and he's also working in the corporate world at the moment. And he does run health and well-being programs as well to do with his corporate world. So it's great to have Oier here today for a bit of a chat. So your story is very interesting there, Oier, and I just wondered if you could share with us how you sort of came to be in the holistic health environment.
Thanks, Ceri. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me to your podcast. Yeah, I'd say my story is a little bit is like an interesting one. So all started with with the revelation of I need to do something else when my son was born 8 years ago. I know it's bad to say, but I felt like I had the baby quite late, and I felt dull, and I felt like I wasn't doing my best in terms of health, and I decided to make some changes because I just wanted to. Back in the day, I thought, oh, when he's 18, I'm gonna be quite old, and I want to be in good shape to follow him, to keep up with him. So the first thing I did it was like changing my diet. And I remember at the time, I think I read about the paleo diet, and I started with that. And all of a sudden, I got a lot of energy. So it's incredible when you start making like changes to what you eat, and you look at quality ingredients and keep it basic to just meat, fish, vegetables, and nuts. All of a sudden, I had a pool of extra energy that I didn't have before. I lost, I suppose, like the mental fogging, and I felt like I had superpowers really. And all of a sudden, I felt like I could cope with work, with the baby, with everything, and that led me into do more reading, and then I bumped into Paul Chek. And immediately I got drawn into his teachings, and then when I realized that he was offering holistic life coaching courses, I knew that was the place for me. And since then, I've been studying the basic principles of it and put them in practice. So I don't recommend, or I don't talk about anything that I haven't tried myself. And this whole journey took me to the point that I sold my apartment in Sydney, and I got into a hobby farm here in the Blue Mountains in New South Wales. And here I try my best to grow my own organic vegetables, raise some animals, and just live a more holistic lifestyle in nature, really. So I've been enjoying every single minute of this journey, and I'm really happy where I am today. But also, I'm really excited to find out where the future holds for me. So,
wow,
that's in my story. Yeah,
that's amazing. All the changes and all that desire to kind of learn more. I guess that's a bit similar to me. I sort of had children sort of a bit later, and I sort of keep it brief, but for one thing and another, I developed adrenal fatigue. So that was quite a number of years of recovery for me, and getting myself back on track. And it was through the holistic principles that you've just talked about that sort of helped me to do with diet and lifestyle, and that vicious circle that I was sort of having with the coffee and the sugar and the alcohol that was sort of feeding the adrenal fatigue even more. So definitely helped me following the holistic principles, obviously the hydration, concentrating on drinking enough water during the day, good quality water, and also getting to bed on time as well. That was a huge one for me.
Indeed.
So getting to bed by 10, and switching off those blue lights. We're all sort of tend to be drawn to those, I think, and making sure our room's nice and cool, and a blackout environment, that sort of thing. So that definitely helped. So that's great. I mean, in terms of what you're doing now with the corporate job, I'm assuming that's kind of keeping you busy full time. And with what you're doing with running your health and well-being programs, I mean, you've implemented it for yourself, which is great, and you've made the big move from Sydney out to the Blue Mountains, and all those skills with the land that you're on at the moment. Are you helping others at the moment in terms of anything like that?
Well, as you will say, like I work in the corporate world. On my, it's my daily job. I work in IT, but my passion for health and well-being has transcended my job. So, like 3 or 4 years ago, I volunteered to lead this health and well-being program, or we call it Site Council, where I'm responsible I lead a group of also passionate people to organize events and activities, or run workshops to inspire and motivate people to make healthy choices. Especially in the corporate world, that people is under a lot of stress, chasing the carrot or the money, and they don't look at the flags or the signals that their body send. The only thing is, like, they don't know, but with what I know, I try to implement as much as I can from the basic principles from the Czech Institute into those events and activities. So I always try to fit them within the 4 doctors: Dr. Happy, Dr. Direct, Dr. Movement, and Dr. Quiet. And obviously, I have to do it in a way that is appealing to the general population, even though they are not conscious about their health. I have to do it in a way that motivate them to do it, and reaping the benefits without knowing, really. And then on top of that, I'm starting to build my own practice as a one-on-one coach, which I started with my first client last month, and looking for growing that as I work in my normal job. So I suppose all this I can maintain because, first of all, I'm really passionate about it, and second of all, I have all that extra energy from, I suppose, the healthy choices I make.
Yeah, that's great. You've touched on the 4 doctors, and that was something that I wanted to chat to you about today, because many people might not be aware of Paul Chek's approach with the last 4 doctors that you'll ever need, which is your Dr. Quiet, Dr. Movement,
Dr. Diet.
Yeah, so the main thing I wanted to touch on really was how each of the 4 doctors, how you sort of implementing them in your day-to-day life, how you're sort of implementing all of that, especially perhaps Dr. Movement and Dr. Quiet. That'd be 2 that I'd be very interested to hear about in particular.
That's a great question, and I will start by saying that even as a coach, I admit and I recognize that it's difficult to find the perfect balance between the 4 doctors. That's where we aim to, but for some reason, you always tend to, focus on 3 of the doctors, and you leave 1 behind, and you then play catch up, and then so. It takes a while to get there, but we are all human and we all make the same. So don't feel guilty if you do too. But so I'll focus first on you say Dr. Quiet and Dr. Movement, right?
Yes.
So
yeah.
With Dr. Quiet, what I do to implement those doctors, that doctor in particular, is every morning when I wake up, after brushing my teeth and drinking some water, the first thing I do is I go into meditation, and that set me up for the day. Sometimes I can go for just 15 minutes. Sometimes I can go for almost an hour, depends on the day, depends on my mood, depends on what I need. I just sit there breathing, and then I listen to what I need for the day. Sometimes, like everyone else, I'm pressed with time, kids, work, and you know. But I tend to, even if it's for 5 minutes, I will do it. But usually it's between 20 and an hour. Um, then what I have as well is reminders in my phone, because one of the things I'm guilty of is when I start working on my IT job, I I go into the hamster wheel, and sometimes I forget about stopping, right? So um, I put reminders, a couple of reminders during the day, or 3 reminders usually mid-morning, lunchtime, and in mid-afternoon, to just breathe and close my eyes, breathe in, breathe out for a couple of minutes, and that brings me back to center and sets me up for the next part of the day. Uh, and then, as a general rule, I block my calendar to have lunch outside in the sun. I'm extremely lucky. I live in a national park, so I can just get out, and eat with my feet on the grass, looking at the trees and listening to the birds. So those are mainly the main areas that I work with Dr. Quiet. Um, Obviously, I mean, I do some other things, like, for example, for the last 2 years, and you will know this, I embarked myself in a spiritual work, like a self-mastery course called the Master's Way, and that has been also a great tool for Dr. Quiet, and that has helped me with the meditations as well. So that has taken me, a step further in the meditation space, I suppose, and a lot of, uh, self-reflection on top of the meditation, which is become a practice, a weekly and daily practice, really. Weekly because we meet every week, and daily because we use those tools every day. So that's Dr. Quiet. And for Dr. Movement, I'm gonna surprise a lot of people. I I do move, but I don't move like a crazy amount. So what I do for Dr. Movement is, after the meditation, I usually do 30 minutes of stretching, as per the check courses. I did the scientific stretching course, and that, opened my eyes into how important is stretching. So I prioritize stretching over any type of exercise if I'm running short of time. So I do 30 minutes of stretching, and then what I do is another 30-45 minutes of exercise. I usually do core strengthening, core, lower back, and butts, or I do some strength training with elastic bands. And then what I do is, in the morning and after lunch and in the evening, I take the dogs for a walk, up and down the road, which is around 1.5 kilometers. In the afternoon, I use that to pick up my son from the school bus, and that get me, a fair amount of steps per day, almost the 10,000, but not quite the 10,000. So that's usually in my daily routine. Then on the weekends, I love going bush walking or bush running in the bush. Um, and I do that pretty much at least one of the 2 days of the weekend. And I can do it just by myself or with family. I have to say, sometimes I enjoy just by myself, because when I'm in the bush, then I stop, and sometimes, to me, that's a kind of meditation as well, and it's part of the Dr. Quiet, because I just sit there and just take it all in and be with myself. So yeah, those are those two doctors, and then
the other two
obviously,
doctors that I forgot to mention earlier, sorry, obviously Dr. Diet, and Dr. Happy were the ones I didn't mention earlier, but certainly the Dr. Quiet and the Dr. Movement I was particularly interested in. So I'm not too sure if you want to sort of touch on the other two as well while we're on the subject.
Yeah, Dr. Diet, it's I do, you know, the basics, like I eat only organic produce. Uh, I try, mostly vegetables and meat and fish and nuts. Rarely I touch the fruit, and I drink lots of water. So almost 3 liters of water per day. It's true that with with time, like over the years, at the beginning, when I say I started with the paleo diet, I went really extreme,
Mm-hmm.
and and I realized with time that, you know, you have to look after doctor diet, but without getting too extreme, because then otherwise you are not going to find that balance. So, um, you know, from time to time, like everyone else, I go out and I eat out, or I, buy myself something, an ice cream or something. The only thing I do is I try to find the best option within the, if I do a bad choice or a not that good choice, I try to find the best option. Or if I, for example, I eat ice cream, I make sure that it's the best quality ice cream I can find. So sometimes my wife thinks I'm crazy. Sometimes I've driven almost 35 minutes to get the right ice cream.
That's not
So
unreasonable.
and for Dr. Happy, this is the, I suppose, the most difficult doctor of all to understand for people at the beginning. But for Dr. Happy, for me, it's been like, since that day that my son was born, I was very clear on my dream, on my very one goal, which was, uh, be healthy and fit, so I can enjoy the most amount of years with my son. Like, have good quality fun. And I always say, like, oh, if he's 20 and he asks me to go with him to climb Mount Everest,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be in a position that at least be able to consider it. Like, not saying, oh no, in my back, my knees, I'm too old. I didn't want to be that type of father. So that was my goal, and has evolved to, I want to live for as long as I can in the best quality possible. And with that, that's what makes me happy, and that's what drives the rest of the doctors in my life. But it's all around being around my son and my family in general. But I think my son was the catalyst. I felt that sense of joy and responsibility and wanted more of that
Mm-hmm.
triggered the whole the whole process that led me
Well,
to
it
this
is
point.
a life-changing thing when you have a child, and suddenly you have all this responsibility really for this little person, and everything that your life had been is suddenly, it changes. It completely changes. And I think for me, I also had a traumatic birth with my son, and that sort of triggered a number of things for me, and obviously becoming a mum for the first time as well. So it definitely, it was a bit sort of spiraling in a way, and I often reflect on that as well, how it did change my life. Obviously, in hindsight now, it's grown me as a person, I think, because I've learned a lot of things along the way, and I think just something you said to do with Dr. Diet just then, it's I think for me, I kind of like to use the philosophy, it's more about progress, not perfection. And the reason I like to use that is like you said about going extreme with your diet. And I used to do CrossFit for a number of years, and I was a full-on CrossFit fanatic, and I'd be there 4 or 5 days a week training, giving 100%, and then obviously dialing in the nutrition to go with it. And obviously that it comes with good results as well. But obviously, to do with adrenal fatigue, that kind of drives you further down and down. So you've got to draw the line somewhere. So that's pretty much what I had to do. I had to stop the CrossFit, or I chose to stop the CrossFit to recover, and set myself on with Dr. Movement the working in principles, which I'm sure we've all done at some point, but more about things like yoga and mobility and stretching and lots of walking as well is what I did. So that was definitely helping me along with my my recovery, and also not being so extreme with the limitations of your diet. I think the more you restrict, the more you can kind of end up going the other way, and then perhaps binging and sort of self-sabotaging yourself as well. So, I mean, I go with those principles that you mentioned about all the organic food, and I certainly do that as much as possible, and definitely better quality meat and wild caught fish. So that's definitely a good investment in terms of your money. And
Yeah,
I know you mentioned that you were growing your own vegetables as well. Is that what you're doing?
yeah, and
Wow.
that's been a great learning, because I've never grown any plant or flower in my life, and here I was trying to figure out how to produce organic food for like a household. I have to admit I haven't mastered it yet, so I'm still learning, but I have enough to not to have to go to shops that often. But my end goal is to have like a continuous supply of
That's great.
produce, so I don't have to buy vegetables in the supermarket or in the shop or whatever.
Mm.
I buy online from a farmer directly, but yeah. Also, obviously, I'm limited by the climate of the Blue Mountains, so I cannot grow everything that my son and my wife like to eat. But we're also trying to turn into eat what is available at that time of the year. But with an 8-year-old kid, you know how picky they can be, so it's not
Look,
easy.
I can relate to that. I mean, my son is 7; he'll be 8 at the end of the year, and my daughter's just turned 6. So they're definitely fussy eaters.
And
That's a whole different subject.
yeah, before we move on, one of the things I wanted to say about being too strict with the diet is when your when your you being that strict causes stress, then you are tapping into the field of Dr. Quiet, and you are creating an stress that you don't need and is not going to help you. So just relax. Like, we all have heard about the 80-20, right? Like, as Paul Chek say, like, if your body eats well or gets a good source of fuel for 80% of the time, then it can cope with recovering from 20% of the time making bad choices. I don't try to push it all the way to the 20, but what I'm saying is I don't feel guilty when I make a not so good choice, because I know that the rest of the time I'm quite diligent and I'm eating well, so I don't just punish myself for that. And I think that's the finding that balance is like, eating well most of the time and then enjoy life from time to time like everyone does.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, you certainly got some good kind of diet and lifestyle and health tips there, Oya. Do you think there's anything else that you want to add to that?
I think you tap into that earlier, like and I think this is part of Dr. Quiet, and I think I missed it. Is like the importance of sleep, and I think that's the most underrated health decision that you can make. Sleeping the right amount of time at the right time, so making sure that you go to bed between 10:30 and waking up between 6 and 6:30, So you just go with your circadian rhythm. What you say, having the temperature of your room not too hot, not too cold, and just try to block the blue light after 6 p.m. or so. That's why I'm wearing these glasses. I don't usually wear glasses, but these are uh, the blue light blocking. So I think that's the most underrated health option that you have in your hand, really. But it's probably one of the hardest uh, to to get over it, because people is really used to touching the phone first thing when they wake up, and also right before they go to bed, and most of the people sit in front of the TV right before going to bed, and also they eat right before going to bed. So they eat late, they go to bed late, they watch TV. All those are kind of ingrained in society, and they are really difficult to change. I have, for example, I come from Spain, and in Spain is even more prominent. Like people work until very late, until 7 p.m. sometimes 8 p.m. Some crazy people even until 9 p.m. So when they leave work, they feel like they haven't done anything with their day. And what do? They make up for the time that they didn't have during the day, and they spend it at night. So they end up going to bed at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. sometimes, and then they go to work the next day. So that's one thing that I've been trying to teach my mom back in Spain and my brothers, and it's not sinking. And doesn't matter what I do, what I say, is so ingrained in the culture there that is really difficult. But it's by far the one with the most benefits, apart of the diet. So I have to say, changing the diet will give you that extra energy, but being rested, properly rested, that is the cherry on top of the cake. I think you get more. I suppose you feel it more when you change diet, but when you change your sleeping habits as well, it makes a big difference.
I definitely think sleep is life-changing, and I think, people might laugh when I sort of say that, but when I was in the midst of my adrenal fatigue, I did not sleep, and I don't think my daughter slept for the first year of her life. Well, that's certainly what it felt like anyway. But to be sleep deprived and to sort of first thing in the morning wake up and not feel able to face the day. It's like, how am I going to get through today just with not having any energy? And also that obviously affects your mood, brings you down a bit, and obviously then getting up and drinking a few coffees, and that sort of spikes the cortisol, putting you in the fight and flight response, and it's perpetual circle really. And I look back at that and think, wow, sleep is the most underrated tool that we have at our disposal, and best of all, it's free.
Yeah.
we just need to learn to tap into it, and it's definitely underestimated. And as I said, when I did get some sleep, it was life-changing. I suddenly felt my energy stores kind of I felt like I was plugging my battery in, and my batteries were being slowly recharged.
I'm glad that you said that, because that's the analogy I give to everyone. It's like if you're like one of those automated vacuum cleaners that, in order to work perfectly during the day, they have to be charged in the charging dock, in the charging station, let's say from 10 to 6. And if they don't fully recharge, then they are not going to be able to vacuum the whole house during the day. So that's the analogy with our human body. We know that it's going to recover and fix itself from those 2 hours or 2 times in the day. And if you miss by any chance that window, you are gonna not your body's not gonna perform like it should. And it makes you look back at your crazy teenage years and all those sleepless nights to study at university or partying, and you think, oh my God, like if I, only if I knew. I would like to leave your listeners. I don't remember the author, but there's a great book called Why We Sleep. It's by a Californian doctor. It has a plethora of data from I think the last 10, 20 years of research in lab on sleeping patterns, and the book gives you a great explanation of exactly what happens to your body when you're sleeping. And even the scary part is that explains very specifically what are the consequences if you miss the right amount of sleep, one day, a week, a month, and how it compounds. And it's quite scary, really. Like it makes you really make the changes if you read the book. Saying that, it taps really into so much detail that sometimes it can be heavy and you can fall asleep reading it. But the author says that that's the best feedback you can give to him. If you fall asleep reading his book, he will be extremely happy. And it does happen, but when you get through it, it's eye-opening, really eye-opening, because it is pure science and data on what happened to your body if you don't sleep. So
yeah, that sounds like a really interesting read. Actually, I'm always looking for new books to read, so I might add that one to my list. That sounds very interesting.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for sharing everything, Oier. I really appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So if people want to sort of contact you, Oier, how might they do that? Do you have a website or an Instagram page or Facebook?
Yeah. Website is still under construction, even though my job is building websites. I always leave myself to the end, but it's coming. But for now, you can find me on Instagram. That's my main channel, and it's at Oier Ruiz. Is OIERRRUIZ. Oier Ruiz, and you can find me there. And I put updates on what I'm doing here in the hobby farm, what I'm growing, tips on how to do things. So yeah,
I can certainly add those with the notes as well for this podcast. So yeah, thanks for coming, Oier. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.